How's it going, Geoff? Welcome back to
Good.
Culinary Wisdom. How you
Good to
doing?
see you, my friend.
You too, man. Last time we spoke, you told your amazing story, so we won't go into that. We'll just jump into a really fun topic, which you're an expert in. When people think about nutrition, they're primarily focused, they're thinking in terms of protein, in terms of fats and carbohydrates, basically those three. So when they look at food, they just see, is it high in protein? Is it high in fat? Is it high in carb, right? That's all, it's just three things. But, there's more things in it, which we're both very excited about, like fiber. But today, we could do a whole episode on that. But today I want to talk about polyphenols, which are so cool. So you want to start by just telling us what a polyphenol is?
But I know you mentioned fiber. I just want to touch on that because it kind of segues right into polyphenols.
Sure.
There are two really big things. Well, one, I believe fiber should be the fourth macronutrient. So you have protein, carbs, fats, and fiber. Now, what is a macronutrient? Macro meaning large, meaning you need a large amount of them in your diet for proper health. And you need much more protein, you need a lot of carbs, and you need a lot of essential fats in your diet to meet all your nutritional needs. So when you look at that, fiber fits that to a T. It's not a micronutrient, which means only a little bit like vitamins and minerals, just to maintain and keep proper health. You need to actually eat a lot. Now, why do we know that? Great study from Harvard called Caprolites Revealed Prebiotics in Pre-Agricultural Human Diet. So what they looked at is caprolites. What is a caprolite? Capro meaning doo-doo and human excrement, and light meaning fossilized. So this is fossilized human poop. So we take a dump and it fossilized in some incidences. Well, this is really cool because we can break apart that and look at it and find out exactly what these ancient human beings were post-Neanderthal, which is true human hominids, Homo sapiens sapiens, but over 100,000 years ago, right? And we can look and see what they were eating. So they took fossilized poop samples from Africa, and they found they were eating 120 grams of fiber per day. 120. North America, Mexico, 150 to 225 grams of fiber every day. Wow. Peru, 100 grams, Australia, 100 grams. So everywhere on the continent, all early man was eating 100 to 200 grams of fiber a day. Now, when you compare that to the modern American, we're consuming 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day. So they were eating 10 to 20 times as much plant foods as we eat today. That's a key indicator that we've radically changed what human beings were eating. Now, this assumption, because we found tools and some bones, were, oh, we must have been meat eaters. Well, no, we can tell by the poop what they pooped out, what they were eating. And there it was. Have you ever had 200 grams of fiber?
Well, I was going to say, I thought I was on the high end. I am on the high end because, as you said, 97% of Americans are getting less than the RDA, which for men is 32 and for women is 25. I'm getting at least 75, 100. I've had 100 days, but I can't imagine 200. And where are they getting that much fiber if they're not eating beans?
Mostly from starchy vegetables, so roots and tubers and green leaves. So you look at gorillas, they eat a ton of green leaves and their fiber intake is actually even higher than that.
So is that what primates are mostly eating is green leafy
greens and fruits, and then some nuts, and then occasional bugs and stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, wow. So that's a lot of fiber, and they're able to. They have some technique to figure out how much fiber is in the poop.
Yep, exactly. It's carbon. So everything, all the macronutrients are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and then protein has a nitrogen molecule. So they're all carbon based. They're all carbon chains. Carbohydrates is carbon atom with a hydrate, H2O molecule. CHO. It's called CHO in the scientific community because it's carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Those three molecules make up all fats, make up all fiber, make up all essential fats, and carbohydrates. The only thing different, and protein.
That's why it's kind of funny, like
CHO and N, nitrogen. So that's the only difference.
Yeah, like even like protein is kind of like a carbohydrate technically, right? Because it has carbon. It's like,
everything starts out as a glucose molecule in the plant, and from the basic glucose molecule, all amino acids are made, all essential fats are made, all of things. Everything is from glucose, and everything can be broken back down in the human body to glucose. And why is that? Because our brain consumes 25% of our entire body's glucose intake in the day.
Right. So even if you're eating protein, your body has to break down that protein to get the glucose to get to your brain anyway. So
if it's using it for a fuel source and not a structural purpose. Right. So it can use the amino acids either to form more proteins or other different types of structures in the body, or it can break down the protein and use it for fuel. Everything, carbs, fat, protein, can all be broken back down into glucose. When I hear people say, oh, I'm on a sugar-free diet, I'm like, no, quite literally every macro is made from the sugar molecule.
Okay, so I totally agree with you that fiber should be a macronutrient. Yes. 100%. So so the polyphenol is a micro, you're going to say a micronutrient?
Yeah, so let me tie one other study in here it's a great new study that just came out last week or last month. So the title of the study is Maternal Dietary Fiber Intake During Pregnancy and Childhood Development. Okay. So it's done in the UK, big study, and it found those mothers with the lowest intake of dietary fiber during their pregnancy gave birth to children who had a 51% increased risk for delayed communication skills, 45% increased risk for delayed motor skills, that's their brain controlling their functioning of the body, as well as delayed development and problem solving and social skills. So they were just neuro and brain compromised by up to 50% just by not eating fiber. I mean, this is a huge study. The conclusion of the study, I'll read it verbatim, dictatum right from the study. The study showed that maternal dietary fiber deficiency during pregnancy might influence an increased risk of neurodevelopmental delay in the offspring. So by not eating enough plants, we're actually having our children be born mentally handicapped compared to someone who is, and I don't mean handicapped in any way, handicapped meaning shortchanged, not as well developed. So underdeveloped and struggling in development.
This is a quality study. There was
published in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine. It's amazing. And as you said, 95% of adults and children aren't consuming enough fiber. Fiber only comes from plants.
So yeah, let's stay on the topic of fiber. We were going to do polyphenols, but I was almost thinking we should do fiber first. But so let's stay on fiber. What was I going to say? Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's clear that we're talking fiber is important for immune health because our body produces immunoglobulins from the breakdown of it. It's important for anti-inflammation. Our microbiome uses that fiber and breaks it down into short chain fatty acids. It's important for energy even. Our body actually.
Right. So let's stay on fiber. Let everything
Okay.
you just said, let's break those down one by one, like so
Yes.
people can, because I'm actually trying to get this. So you're saying besides the fact that it feeds our microbiome, it has something with the immunoglobulins. Can you
Yes.
explain what that is? And so this is not from the microbiome. This is a separate effect of the fiber.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So very interesting in our evolution. So we have what's called a latent gene, a gene that's basically been turned off in our bodies. It used to be active when we were in early Homo sapiens, which is it was a cellulose digesting enzyme. So it was a gene that turned on, and it produced an enzyme that helped us break down cellulose so that we could get energy from it. Now, in our evolutionary process, our bodies felt it was better to actually turn off that gene and turn it off permanently so that we don't digest fiber. Now, why would we do that? If we have 40 trillion cells in our body that are producing all kinds of wonderful metabolites, that are defending us against pathogens, that are breaking down our food and giving us 70% of our nutrition, it's more important that they stay alive than we get a little energy out of digesting the fiber ourselves, which is what most herbivores do. So a lot of people say, well, most herbivores have a longer digestive tract because they need more time to actually break down this cellulose. Ours can shorten, be more efficient, because we're not breaking down the cellulose. We're letting our microbiome do the work.
Does that mean that we have a more dense microbiome than like an herbivore?
Yes, by far. There's over 60,000 different enzymes produced by our microbiome to digest fibers.
You're saying that like the herbivores, they were using this enzyme, right? Like cows can eat grass and have the enzyme to break down the cellulose and release the nutrients from it. But we shut that off, and instead we outsourced that work to the microbiome. And I like to just use this concept I've been thinking a lot about, is that we are just a host for the microbiome. And there's literally, like, we're talking about
not just a host, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we feed them, they feed us.
They don't have arms and legs, right? So we have to go out and make good decisions for them. And if we give them, if we make them happy, yeah, they symbiotically make us happy, which in many ways, but so you're saying that the herbivores, so we developed somehow a denser, more powerful microbiome, and that allowed us to have a shorter intestine.
Because we moved around and we had a variety of foods coming in, polyphenols, which are prebiotics also. Right. Yes, right.
Oh, so
it's not just grasses and greens, which most herbivores focus on. It was the fruits and the nuts and the seeds and the grains and the beans. And now we have all these different types of bacteria that eat these things, and we're saying, hey, wait a minute. They're providing so much good stuff, protecting us from pathogens like viruses and stuff, protecting us and on an immune level from bacteria and fungus and molds and diseases and yeast. This was so important, and our microbiome became so developed. We said, wait a minute, it's more important that they get the fiber. Let's stop using fiber. Let's cut off our enzyme and let them have all the fiber. And they said, thank you. They exploded in complexity. They exploded in number. Now we have one of the most complex and richly dense, microbiomes of all the herbivores. And because of that, we didn't need such a long digestive tract like traditional herbivores.
And that's like, that totally is the answer to like the digestive tract debate. You see people on both sides of it. So okay,
exactly.
So okay, thank you for that. So all the fiber we eat needs to be broken down by the microbiome. We can't do it.
We could if we turned that enzyme
on.
We choose not to. We cellularly see a better benefit if the microbiome does it because they're so much more efficient at it. 60,000 different enzymes for carbohydrate digestion.
So they're living in our colon. So we eat food. Foods high in fiber are greens, beans, fruits. Is there any fiber in animal products?
Zero.
Zero,
Not
right.
a single bit of fiber. Eggs, fish, dairy,
Right.
nada,
So
nothing.
we
It doesn't exist in the animal kingdom.
we eat these delicious whole foods. They bypass all the enzymes in our small intestine, get into our large intestine, and that's when they're broken down.
That's
And
where most of the fermentation happens.
Okay,
correct.
most. And so now you were talking about the fiber, all the benefits of what happened. So all of the benefits from the fiber derive from the breakdown by the microbiome. Okay.
Yes. Oh, it's multi-pronged. So we get, like with polyphenols. With polyphenols, we get a direct health benefit from the polyphenol itself. And then we also get, when the microbiome chews it up and poops out different metabolites, byproducts of what its
Postbiotics, they call it.
Postbiotics, exactly.
So
those have benefits on top of that. So you're getting dual effects.
So does fiber have a similar effect? Is fiber like
Yes.
there is some so what are the benefits of the fiber before they're broken down?
So pulling. So fiber is what they call hydrophilic or hygroscopic. It pulls water. If you consume a lot of fiber, if you look in plants, fiber is almost always attached with a lot of water, like a water in the plant. So as that fiber separates, it pulls up more water. Now, what it can do in the gut is basically pull toxins out of the system in the digestive tract, or bind to toxins and carry them out. So they have a binding effect too, as well, kind of like a big sponge. Go in and mop up and clean up all the nasties in the gut. So this is a really important mechanism. It also slows the amount of sugars and carbohydrates going into the system, so that you have a steady pace that the body can handle and process, so you don't get this dump of carbohydrates going into the system.
That's a great point. Like, all carbs are not the same. If you're eating beans, which do have carbs in them, the fiber is everything that people are afraid of the carbs, the blood glucose levels, or gaining weight. It's calories or carbohydrate calories from things with fiber is not the same, because of it slows down the absorption.
Correct. And then polyphenols even do double work on top of that.
I was going to say, there's like a study I read with blueberries. So if you eat blueberries, which are carbs, if you eat them before a carb meal, you actually have less the negative effects of the carb meal by eating a carb, because of the polyphenols and the fiber in the blueberries.
Correct.
Oh, yes.
So
Okay.
They did an interesting study to put that to the test, to see if that was really the case. It's called an isocaloric study. That means exact same amount of calories from carbs, from fat, from protein, exactly the same, except one only plants and one plant and animal mixed. Exact same number of calories. The ones in the plant lost body fat. The ones in the mixed did not. And so a calorie is not a calorie, is a calorie. What's that calorie coming with? The fiber and the polyphenols, they change the weight. Even glycemic load. So they've known to say, okay, well, this has X amount of sugar in it. That should go in and affect the glycemic load, which is how much glucose is actually being elevated in the bloodstream. Well, when they looked at how much the glycemic mix of a food, like let's say a mango, really actually very high in sugar, very sweet to the taste. But because it's so rich in mangiferin, which is a specific polyphenol that is unique to mangoes, so it actually helps the body metabolize, slow it down, so it doesn't spike. So even though it's high in sugar, it's low glycemic.
Amazing.
That's the difference. It's not just the sugar in the fruit, it's how that sugar gets processed with the help of fiber and polyphenols. Now, there's over 8,000 different polyphenols in fruits and vegetables, and that's what we just identified. We keep discovering new ones all the time. So these phytonutrients only made by plants, polyphenols and fiber, only found in plants. You get zero, none in any animal product.
Well, can you say that you get, like, I think in like the yellow color in the butter has, maybe that's not a polyphenol, or eggs, do you get like zeaxanthin? It's one of those orange color, or is that like a carotenoid? Maybe it's carotenoids.
Right, which is more a vitamin, right, than it's a version of vitamin A.
Gotcha.
A little bit different. Polyphenols are unique to the plant kingdom.
Plant kingdom. Okay, so okay, we could talk about fiber more, but let's switch to polyphenols. Let's just define them, because that's really, I think it's kind of a unfortunate name, polyphenol, because it sounds like a boring word, but it's so exciting because it's all the different, everything we love about food, really. Even when people eat meat, right? You're always putting herbs and spices on the meat, which are all the polyphenols, right? Am I right that the polyphenols are what give all of the natural whole foods, not the artificial candy, obviously, but what give whole foods, like grapes, they're red grapes, their red color, purple cabbage, the purple color, turmeric, that orange color. All of the things that give plants their colors, also their flavors and smells. These are all polyphenols, and right? Okay.
And this is part of the symbiotic relationship that plants have with humans. Humans developed eyesight that has a very narrow bandwidth that sees colors. So plants said, well, if I want you to eat some of these items, I'm going to make them brightly colored so you can see them even from a far distance and attract you to them. And when we see brightly colors or deeply dark colors, generally the darker the color, even to black, like blackberries are one of the highest in polyphenols of all the fruits. So the deeper and darker the colors, the richer the colors, the more intensely high in polyphenols they are. But okay, so let's look at this first study because it's a whopper. The study is called New Epidemiological Study Found Higher Polyphenol Consumption Reduced the Risk of Severe Cognitive Decline by 50%. So age-related mental decline or dementia, that polyphenol, the highest polyphenol, can cut it in half, your risk. If that's not something you should be focusing on in your diet, I don't know. I like my brain. I like thinking. It's a good tool.
What specific polyphenols or foods were they using in that study?
They just looked at across the board. It's epidemiological, so they're looking at a broad range, a large group of people, just basically asking them what they ate in a day on the average, and then looked at where those foods fell in the polyphenol range. So apples, and strawberries and blueberries, probably the more common ones, but even the highest polyphenols are the spices, like clove is like 10 times that of blueberries, which everybody thinks, oh, blueberries are the richest. Is like, no. But you got acai, you got some other fruits that are a little bit higher than even blueberries. Blueberries is one of my favorite, though, because they're so rich in polyphenols and they taste good.
So the different polyphenols, though, for example, like, there's the ORAC score, which is because polyphenols, because they act as antioxidants as well, meaning, so the ORAC score is a number that is used to show different polyphenols how much free radicals they have the ability to suck up. And the free radicals are what damage our body.
Yes.
Correct.
So oxygen is basically the most toxic substance in the human body, although we do need it. Right. So we have to breathe in oxygen to survive. Our brain feeds on glucose and oxygen almost entirely. So oxygen is important, but oxygen is corrosive. It is, when you look at oxygen, what happens when you apply it to wood, it's called fire.
Right.
Right? You
Or like rust.
or rust and metal. It corrodes things.
When we're just going about our business, experiencing stress and breaking down foods, we're producing these free oxygen, right? These things are, and it's basically rusting our insides. When you eat foods with polyphenols, it is sucking up these oxygen molecules before they have a chance to damage. So drinking cacao, for example, is super high in chocolate, is super high in polyphenol, not with all the sugar and the milk, obviously.
Real cacao.
75–80% chocolate bars. I drink cacao with water, just mix it with water. I drink 3 of those a day. So I'm just flooding my body with these polyphenols. But what I was going to ask you is, so you have the ORAC score. So there's the antioxidant capacity of these different polyphenols, but they do something else besides just antioxidant, right? Because different polyphenols are specific to different parts of the body. Like I know lycopene has been shown to be good for prostate health. Like you mentioned, like blueberries and blackberries, the anthocyanins, that purple color, is good for more brain, right, and heart. So it's really interesting when you look at like the chakras, right, the different colors of the chakras. Like the red color, like the lowest, like goes to the lower chakras, the blue to the higher chakras. The green is good for the heart, the nitrate. So it's really cool how that whole thing works. But what's the other mechanism besides the antioxidants that the polyphenols do for us? Is it turning genes on and off, like, or stimulating certain things?
Yes, it's polyphenols touch almost every aspect of human health.
Wow.
From weight loss to strength gains to creating metabolites that go on to do also lots of different things: liver health, heart health, brain health, prostate health, sexual organ health, breast health. I mean, there's really not a organ in the body that isn't benefited to some degree by different polyphenols. And there's so many different polyphenols. Some of the classics, like in green tea, EGCG, you look at cloves, which is one of the highest in it. When I drink chai tea, because it has both clove and cinnamon. Clove and cinnamon are 2 of the highest antioxidant fighters. Yeah, so excuse me. Basically, this ROS, radical oxygen species. So when an oxygen is not properly bound or hooked up to another molecule, it's radical, and then it can be corrosive to cells. So we just need to rebind it and neutralize its activity. And that's what antioxidants do. They stop that oxidant from being damaging to cells. So we actually use oxygen in that way. We use oxygen to burn fat. It's lipid fat oxidation. That's fat burning.
Right. But we don't want to burn. We don't want to burn anything else, right? We don't want to.
Correct. Exactly. So we need it for some good uses, but we need to tame it when it's not.
So my question is, like I said, like the blueberries have been shown to affect the brain. There's a theory that the polyphenols that make turmeric, the curcuminoids, have a great effect on the stomach cancer, because Indians who eat it every day have the lowest stomach cancer. So is it just that the different polyphenols go to different parts of the body and they have an antioxidant effect in that way? How does that work?
It's exactly how it works. Yes. So we know that got something tickle in my throat. Sorry about that.
No problem.
But we know that curcumin will actually accumulate in the brain. So our brain loves it so much, it's so neuroprotective, it'll suck it up in the brain and hold it for an entire lifetime.
Wow.
And so it'll bioaccumulate so much so then they do autopsies on the brain for people living in India, where turmeric is used almost on a daily basis. There are portions of the brain that are already yellow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how much curcumin is actually stored.
I mean, the Indian, it's poor country, a lot of malnutrition and pollution, and yet they have the lowest stomach cancer and Alzheimer's in the world, I believe.
Correct.
Yeah.
The powerful effects of polyphenols, but not just the polyphenols, they're metabolites too. Let's talk about a really cool metabolite from ellagic acid. So the polyphenol is ellagic acid, which is found in green tea, which is found in pomegranate, for example. Now, ellagic acid, and there's lots of different ellagenins, forms of this ellagic acid, but the ellagic acid actually then can be turned, some of it get eaten by the microbiome, and they poop out these things called urolithin A and urolithin B.
Okay.
So urolithins then go into the system and actually support muscle strength. So they've shown that a higher incidence of urolithin A gave people 12% increase in their muscle strength. And then they looked at endurance athlete, 15% longer endurance. So we're looking at affecting all things. And then they looked at the polyphenols that were in greens, dark greens, right? They have specific polyphenols that were going in and causing weight loss. So an interesting study using lemna, right? I'll go ahead and pull up that study so I can read it verbatim. Give me just a sec.
Sure.
So it's called the Green Mediterranean Diet. So what they did is take the world's most popular diet, which is the Mediterranean diet, and the most successful overall at creating weight loss and sustaining weight loss. Now, Mediterranean diet is vastly, the majority of it is whole food plants. And then some, grain foods, cooked grain foods and stuff like that, as well as olive oil and some fish. That's pretty much the Mediterranean diet. So it's largely a plant-based diet. Well, they added a little bit of nuts, an ounce of nuts, I believe, and added green tea as regular. But the main thing they changed was just putting in a little bit of mankai, which is another name for lemna or the limnaceae, the water lentils, the duckweed. So they did an 18-month clinical trial, about 300 people with obesity. And they found that those in the Mediterranean diet dropped about 39% liver fat when they had the green Mediterranean diet, a 20% with just the Mediterranean diet, and then only 12% with an actual nutritional counselor telling people what to eat. So the green, just by adding the greens of the high polyphenols, because lemna is one of the richest in polyphenols of all the dark greens, higher than kale, spinach, spirulina, all of them. So it's amazing. 2 times as much fat loss as the #1 diet in the world, just by adding the polyphenol content. That's what polyphenols can do for you. Their benefits are so across the board and so pronounced. Twice as much as the #1 diet, twice as much internal fat.
And the liver fat is the most dangerous fat, right?
That's what kills us, really, not the subcutaneous fat that a lot of people worry about. It's the trunk fat or the internal, what they call the visceral adipose tissue.
That's amazing. I want to talk more about lemna with you in the future, but what are the polyphenols that are in lemna and other? Because I know it has lutein. Is lutein or are carotenoids technically polyphenols, or are they a separate category of
carotenoids? Are what they call a provitamin. So they are a precursor to vitamin A. So our body can take carotenoids and turn them into vitamin A.
But they do other things besides just convert to vitamin A, right? Or no? That's their main.
Yeah, they do. There are a whole host of carotenoids,
because they're in
not
our
just the beta carotene that we typically convert to vitamin A or retinol A.
Right, but we also use the carotenoids go into like the lutein, isn't that like make up the retina of our eyes?
Yeah, so not only eyes, but the brain. So
Right,
they used to focus just on lutein protecting eyes.
right.
But now we know that lutein is the #1 carotenoid that is absorbed by an infant's brain in the womb.
Mm,
So it is predisposed to soaking up almost all of the lutein that the mother ingests.
right.
It's to protect its brain because it's going to be exposed to things you don't get exposed to in the womb.
Hmm.
So it's an immediate toxin load. And that's why the brain, the infant in the womb just soaks up all of the, about 60% of all of the lutein that a mother will eat gets taken by the baby
Wow.
in the
That's
womb.
really interesting. So lutein is a carotenoid. It's in things like turmeric, carrots, like it generally. So going to the color, let's make this really fun. When you see the orangey yellow colors, right? And sometimes you buy kale, kale's green, but if you let the kale get a little bit like old, it'll start to turn yellow. So kale, a lot of leafy greens like lemna are super high in lutein. So so that's serving a purpose besides converting to vitamin A. It could also does other things, correct? Like go to the brain. So okay, so what it is, and that's not a broken down from the microbiome. That's not like a postbiotic. So okay, I'm trying to wrap this in together because there's so many pieces to this, but basically some of the polyphenols gets released into the bloodstream before it gets into the colon and broken down. Some of it gets released, I guess, in the small intestine with the rest of the food and
so we absorb some of the polyphenols directly, and some of them get turned into different metabolites by our microbiome, which then we benefit. So we have multi benefits from a single polyphenol and it has multi-functions in the human body. The body can use them for hepatoprotection or liver protection. It can use them for carbohydrate efficiency, so preventing diabetes. It can cause vascular dilation, which allows our blood vessels to be flexible and increase our improve our hypertension or reduce the risk of hypertension. I mean, the health benefits are so across the board. It's amazing.
So let's backtrack a moment, because it's funny, a lot of people they say like, oh, we shouldn't be eating plants because they have these toxins. But the beautiful thing about nature and plants is when you see a beautiful bright, I've been picking pound of blackberries every day now. When you and you notice, like, the brighter the color, the less bugs are there. So it's like the polyphenols, they're poison to bugs. So the plant produces it to keep the bugs away, but then simultaneously attract us. And the brighter the brighter the color, the more healthy the plant, the more sunlight it gets, the more it produces these polyphenols. So what's poison to them actually is incredibly healing to us.
Yes, because one, we've developed a symbiotic relationship to learn how to turn these things to our advantages. But two, let's like the plants really put some balancing effects in there. So you take a look at, say, olives. Olives are a great food, but they're high in fat. So some people would say, oh my God, they're rich in fats. That's not a good thing, even saturated fats. But then you look at one of the polyphenols. One of my favorite polyphenols on the planet is called hydroxytyrosol. Hydroxytyrosol is so potent an anti-cancer agent. They're now isolating it and using it as a drug to actually destroy cancer cells. That's how powerful it is. They're saying, physicians and pharmaceuticals are saying, oh my God, this is better than the drugs we have. We just need to get it out, isolate and stuff like that. But what it does is actually can go into the liver and prevent the liver from becoming fatty liver. So you've got a fat in there that the body can use for energy, but you've also got this polyphenol in there that puts the brakes on it being damaging. So you can't just look and say, oh, that olive has lots of fat on it, I'm not going to eat it. No, because you're not looking at the whole olive. It's got a polyphenol on it that protects you from that. So you don't have to worry about it.
Kind of like the blueberry with the carbs. But when you cure the olive, are polyphenols stable? In other words, when you cook them, when you ferment them, when you cure them, are you still getting the polyphenols?
Yeah, and which is what most people are proposing, is most of the researchers are proposing now, is the method of action for olive oil's benefits compared to other oils. If you press soybeans or corn, you don't get polyphenols in it. For whatever reason, the hydroxytyrosol stays with the fat when you press it. So you've got a hydroxytyrosol, which is a powerful antioxidant. So it prevents the oil from oxidizing, and then it's oxidized oil that can become dangerous to the body. So most oils, once you isolate them, oxidize immediately. Olive oil doesn't tend to do
So
that.
it's the same principle of the antioxidant effect, just like to protect our body, right? When you have something like olive oil, you still should not heat it up too much and keep it covered, right? But so that's kind of like when you put like lemon on an apple, it doesn't turn brown. Like you could do that experiment, and that's again the antioxidant effect. Okay, so the olives, so you just inspired me, because I haven't been doing too much olive oil. I've been trying to do whole foods, but you're right. There's like a certain olive oil that is like really, really spicy and bitter. So that's obviously coming from, like, polyphenols also tend to have a bitter taste, right?
Yes.
So that's a good sign. And it's another unfortunate thing in our culture that I forget where I read this. Was it in India or some other country? Like the amount of bitter foods that Americans eat compared to Asians. Like, have you ever had the bitter melon from Chinese and Indian food? Like that, and like that's been shown to be so great for diabetes. They've known that for like thousands of years. So I'm gonna so you're saying that, I guess all the polyphenols are different, right?
Yes.
But some of them are more heat resistant than others, right? Yes. And in fact, they've shown that the tomato, right, like the lycopene, which is a polyphenol, which the red color, it's also in watermelon. When you heat that up in the tomato, you actually get more benefits, right?
That's correct. And the similar effect with lutein, as soon as you heat it, you actually amplify the amount of bioavailable lutein. So you get more lutein than cooked greens than you do non-cooked greens, which is interesting. And there's same in some fruits. You get more of the release or bioavailability of it. Now, when you blend stuff in a blender, like I love smoothies. So initial research came out and said, yeah, but when you blend it, the particular size is too small, and then the microbiomes can't attach to it, and don't feed that. Well, yeah, that's true. And it actually makes them more available to the human instead of the microbes. But generally, if you're eating some blended foods along with some whole foods, you're feeding everybody. You're feeding your body more nutrients by blending, and you're feeding your microbiome more nutrients when you eat whole foods.
Interesting. So you're saying
both are good.
Right. So you mentioned like cooking some foods. I mean, I guess there's a downside, right, to cooking. You increase the polyphenols, but then you damage some of the enzymes. So there's some things that you do want to cook, and so you're basically saying you want to have a balance of both. Yeah.
So there was an amazing study that they looked at leukocytosis. So leukocytes are white blood cells. They're a defense mechanism of our body, and they go up if you eat junky food. So they said, all right, well, we can measure the amount of leukocytes. You just pull blood and then put it into a petri dish and take a look at it under a microscope, and you can count how many leukocytes, white blood cells are. They're basically our garbage men, right? They're macrophages. They go in and engulf the toxins or bad particles that shouldn't be there and get them the hell out of there. They're a little garbage men. More garbage men means you got more garbage in the blood, basically.
Okay.
So, all right, so leukocytosis. So they measured the amount of leukocytes and they said, okay, wait a minute, we'll take a completely raw meal, uncooked. We'll have a mixed meal of some raw food and some cooked meal. And then we'll have a completely cooked, even some deep fried foods or whatever. Okay. So they look at the leukocytes on the completely cooked meals. Yeah, they were really high. It's like, okay, no brainer. But they came down, the body tried to compensate for them. Then they looked at the raw, and it was really, really low, like practically hardly any leukocytes at all. So, right. But the interesting part of the study was the mixed diet still had very low. So why wasn't it more in the middle? You got high from the cooked foods, low from the raw foods. You'd expect raw and mixed to be somewhere in the middle, but it wasn't. It was still almost as low as the raw foods. That's how powerful the polyphenols, the antioxidants, the other phytonutrients, and the fiber are in that food. So if I'm doing a big cooked food meal, I always have a salad or some greens or something else in its raw state to help with that balance.
So you're saying that some polyphenols, along with other things like vitamin C and B and enzymes, some polyphenols are destroyed from cooking, especially if you're, and there's cooking for like a long time. And then there's, I mean, okay, for example, beans, right? Like black beans are high in polyphenols and they survive cooking, even in a pressure cooker.
Yes. Yeah. So it depends on the different plants and it depends on the specific nutrients. So you kind of have to take them one at a time because some it will decrease and some it will increase just depending. I just refer to the research because they say it like it is. They don't favor one. They don't have an opinion on either. They just look at see what happens in the bloodstream.
Right. So do you want to talk go over a few polyphenols in particular that are interesting? You mentioned a few already. I really like the idea of the different colors. I mean, that's again, I always want to keep reminding people, this is so fascinating, the science, the research, but like people 1,000 years ago intuitively knew eat the rainbow. I mean, and it's so sad, right? Like the Skittles commercial, like eat the rainbow. It's like, think of how much they hijack our brain. Like yes. you get all, like every human baby, they see bright green, bright yellow, bright red, and we're attracted to M&Ms, to these. So, but you get none of the polyphenol benefits. So it's like, it's such a hijacking. It should actually be illegal, I think, but basically, we're drawn to these different colors. And is the idea to try to get as many colors as you can?
Because some of the polyphenols are so unique and some of them are so specific to their advantages. So one, just focus on high polyphenol foods and you're probably going to be cool. Right. So like I start my day with a mix of green tea and chai tea. So the green tea has its own specific polyphenols, catechins, and ECGG in there. So that has its specific. Black tea, which is in chai tea, but it also combined with cinnamon and clove, which are way high on the antioxidant level. So now I'm getting a nice mix of different polyphenols and herbs and spices to start my day. That primes the pump, so to speak. And then I start out with my first meal as berries and dark greens, the highest polyphenols in the food category other than spices and herbs. So now I got my spices and herbs since they're the king of the antioxidants and polyphenols. And now we're moving into the food groups, which will give you the calories and the nutrition, the vitamins and minerals. With the herbs don't really supply macronutrients, they're supplying phytonutrients. With dark greens and lots of berries like blueberries, acai, blackberries. Blackberries is one of the highest in polyphenols of all the berries. and just throwing strawberries in there, fisetin is amazing for heart health and eye health. It's cool that each one of these polyphenols have their unique places, and some of them have diverse places. Like hydroxytyrosol in olives, which I'll have maybe as a later end of the day. It's anti-inflammatory, so you want to decrease inflammation while you sleep. It's anti-aging, it's anti-cancer. It's like the immune protective, neuroprotective.
Can you overdo it with the polyphenols, or is it just,
No, this is
no?
remember the caprolite studies that we talked about in the beginning. They're eating 200 grams of fiber. Where there's fiber, there's almost always polyphenols.
Right.
And
Also,
this is why they evolved, why we evolved into higher and higher brains, because we're all this neuroprotection.
That's an interesting
immune health protection. We survived, we grew, we benefited from these fiber and polyphenol benefits that helped us out in our own evolution and helped us change to become so much more efficient. But then we started removing all these foods that were doing all the magic.
Yeah.
And we see from that fiber study a 51% decrease in one generation. That's just from the mother eating that low fiber diet down to the baby. And they're already seeing it in one generation. We're not talking generations of evolution or impact of diet. We're talking one person eating and it affecting their offspring.
What do you think that is? I mean, it's probably many different downstream effects, but what do you think is affecting the child? Is it the microbiome in the mother that's...
I think it's dual. One, there's probably direct relationship to the fiber itself through butyrate production and all that kind of stuff, gut health, being able, remember, the vast majority of our microbiome feeds on fiber and prebiotics, right? Polyphenols are a prebiotic, fiber is a prebiotic. The more you're eating them, more diversity you have, the better overall health, because they're producing a heck of a lot of different metabolites that, and again, assist in the health. But two, I think fiber in this study is a indicator of how many plants they're consuming.
Oh, right. Okay, so
since fiber only comes from plants, if you're consuming more fiber, you're naturally consuming more plants, which would then have the polyphenols and all the other health benefits.
Unless you're just taking like Metamucil or something. But yeah, I know.
Exactly.
But on that note, we've been going about an hour. We could talk forever. We're definitely going to do part 2, 3, 4. But I know this is a big topic. You mentioned butyrate, right? So,
yes.
So I know this is like, some people are saying like one of the most important molecules in the body, has like hundreds of benefits. Like, what can you tell us about that? You had mentioned that fiber specifically, right? Feeds the microbiome, and they produce butyrate, which is a short chain fatty acid.
That is correct.
Okay.
So there are several different short chain fatty acids, butyrates being one of the most common, propionates, there are others. But those short chain fatty acids have multiple different benefits. One, they feed our gut ciliole, the little hair-like cells that line our gut that actually pull in nutrition. They feed on butyrate.
Okay, so you're saying that along the colon,
yes,
there are these little, there's cells, colon cells that have little hair things that absorb the nutrients.
Correct.
And they eat butyrate.
Yes.
And the butyrate is produced, so those are our cells, and then the microbiome, the bifida or the Akkermansia, some bacteria produce the butyrate, and then those cells get strong from the presence of the butyrate.
So it's cellularly protective. It acts as an anti-inflammatory agent. So if there are toxins in the colon from the breakdown of the food itself, it protects those cells. Then it feeds the cells. It's what they actually use for energy to do the work, so they become healthier. They found that when you have a fiber diet, those cells can grow as much and double in size based on how much butyrate they're able to consume. It's their food source. And then butyrate then acts as a secondary source for energy for us. So the average American, they found out through the research, actually gets about 10% of our total energy from short chain fatty acids. Now, in primates and gorillas, for example, they're getting 20 to 30, up to 50% of their total energy from the digestion of short chain fatty acids.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, I just want to make this note. It's so fascinating. Like, we could eat something that's a fiber that we don't even digest, and then the bacteria living in us make a fat,
Yes.
a very healthy fat. So you could eat no fat, like this whole idea of the keto diet, right? Like,
Yes.
you could actually eat no fat. Like a cow, I'm assuming, is producing a lot of butyrate, and they're probably getting, you said 50 from a primate. Maybe would you say like a cow is getting even more?
Yeah, a lot more.
So basically, they're not eating any fat. They're eating just grass, and they're fat, and then they have a lot of fat, and they're making milk, which is fat. So literally inside of them, they're taking so that they're making butyrate. They're micro
short chain fatty acids, right? So those short chain fats can be used for energy, quick energy too. Now, if we are doing 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day, and our ancestors were doing 10 times as much fiber in a day, and we now know that we get 10% of our total energy just from short chains. What if we were eating 10 times as much fiber? We could be getting 10 times as much energy from butyrate produced by our microbiome.
Oh, so it's 10% of the total amount of
intake of the average American.
Okay, so if you're eating low fiber, you're going to have less energy from the butyrate.
Correct.
But if you eat more fiber, you get more. And that energy from the butyrate, is it a special type of energy? I mean, obviously, it doesn't give us it doesn't make us gain weight, right? It's not like a.
So yes, that can be used for cellular energy basically almost anywhere in the body. It's a very digestible, very easy, because it's a short chain. It's not a long chain.
Now, is it a ketone? Is it similar to a ketone?
No.
Okay.
Ketones act more as a substitute for carbohydrates, where this is more just a true fat that used for energy.
Okay, so this butyrate, it's like it's a sticky thing, right? Is it kind of sticky?
Yeah, it's interesting that in immunological studies, they found that butyrate does two things. One, as it goes into our bloodstream, it stimulates the release or creation of cathelicidin, which is one of the most powerful antiviral compounds our body makes to attack and kill viruses.
No way.
Like COVID.
So you're saying that butyrate, again, going back to butyrate, we're eating fiber. So fiber means you're eating beans, you're eating greens, you're eating whole grains, and you're eating fruits.
Yes.
And that fiber is going into the large intestine, the colon.
Yes.
The bacteria are eating it, producing this butyrate. The butyrate's now going in addition to feeding those cells in the colon, giving us energy. It's going into the blood, and it's feeding the cells that fight viruses like COVID.
It stimulates our body. Uses butyrate to produce cathelicidin. So to produce cathelicidin, which is an immunoglobulin that we were talking about.
Okay, it goes back to the beginning. Okay.
All right. So that is actually where the body actually does it. It takes vitamin D3, which is a hormone, not a vitamin technically, but vitamin D3 stimulates cathelicidin, and so does butyrate. So most of the studies show the higher the butyrate production, the higher the production of cathelicidin, the lower the risk. That is why the studies found that those on a whole food plant-based diet, because of all that fiber, they're getting a lot higher butyrate levels. So it's producing more cathelicidin, which is killing the virus. And that's why you have 63% lower risk of death on a high-paced plant-based diet from COVID than without.
Oh, 63%. Okay.
Yes. So less risk of dying, less risk of being hospitalized. So, but it's the food. When you eat the food, our microbiome turns it into usable stuff to help us defend our own bodies. Because if we die, they die, right? they're helping us help them, you know?
Exactly.
So now here's the cool thing. About half of all that butyrate doesn't even do that. It goes and gets stored in our lungs.
Oh my God.
So, okay, why would butyrate? Well, be stored in the lungs. Okay, so most pathogens, whether they're bacterial or fungal or molds or yeast or viruses, enter here.
Mm.
We breathe them in. So this is the first line of defense, our lungs. Now, when that butyrate, which produced cathelicidin, gets, hey, wait, you just breathed in a virus and you got a virus load, that cathelicidin created by the butyrate and the vitamin D3 can go over and attack the virus. Now, what that does is cause a lot of inflammation, right? But that's a good thing, except when it gets too much, when there's too big a load of the virus, you're creating a hyper-inflammatory state and the lungs can shut down or fill with fluid, which is what we get in pneumonia cases. People actually drown to death in their own fluid created by that. So that's why we're storing all this anti-inflammatory butyrate to quickly and effectively bring down the inflammation after the butyrate-fed cathelicidin comes over and destroys the virus. So you got dual effects going on.
Oh my
It helps
God.
kill the virus, and then it helps bring down the inflammation so that you don't die.
So we store it in our lung cells.
Right,
So it's
around
ready
our
to go.
lungs so that it's easily and quickly accessible for bringing down the inflammation, because we know that's the first line where viruses and
But
bacteria.
how does the butyrate lower the inflammation?
It has an direct anti-inflammatory effect.
So it fights the virus. So it causes the inflammation, but then it also reduces it.
No, butyrate triggers the production of our immune system that has the first line, our innate attacking of the virus. So you got to go kill the virus, right?
Right. In other words, right. We
stop it from
inflammation
reproducing.
is good. You want inflammation, but we want it to be in short doses, just like everything.
Exactly.
Our own lifestyle, right? We should
it's part of the healing process. It's part of, a lot of dead people on the battlefield. You got to clean up the battlefield, right?
So I'm sure you know this as well. The book Fiber Fueled, he talks about, they've even found it in the brain.
Yes.
So the butyrate is going to the brain and again reducing Alzheimer's, right? Because it has a so just like I think he theorizes in the book that just like the butyrate lines the colon, and I can definitely attest to that. When I went whole food plant-based, within 10 days, my burning, painful IBS went away, and it's never come back. I can get bloating, I can get other things, but it's not the pain and the burning, which was probably from a leaky gut. So the butyrate, it patches up or it heals the gut lining, but the blood-brain barrier is similar, he theorizes. So, right. So the blood-brain barrier protects, these free radicals and other things from getting into the brain, and it does, and corroding the brain.
And totally. And we even see the digestion of meat in our digestive tract produces a bile environment, which then can create the leaky gut. And these tangled tau and beta amyloid proteins, which are improperly digested proteins, right, from animal proteins, then can enter through the leaky gut and start bioaccumulating in the brain, leading to Alzheimer's disease. And you add the arachidonic acid that is also in the meat, the flesh. Plants don't make arachidonic acid. It's impossible. We produce some of our own, but only when we need it for proper healthy inflammation. But every time you eat an animal product, you're consuming arachidonic acid in its preformed state. No plant produces that. That is pro-inflammatory and immediately causes inflammation as soon as you put that in your mouth. Wow. So you've got all three scenarios. You're creating the beta amyloid and tau plaques, these tangled proteins by the digestion of meat. It's raising the bile, which causes leaky gut syndrome, which allows these tangles to enter the bloodstream. And then you're creating pro-inflammation from arachidonic acid from the meat, which causes the inflammatory things and allows these tau proteins and beta amyloids to form plaques, along with the cholesterol, and the oxidized cholesterol that comes from the animal products forms these oxysterols, which really explodes in the inflammation in the brain. And now you've got the perfect scenario. That's how eating meat creates Alzheimer's disease in humans.
So
You know the pathways.
you're saying that the amyloid, what did you call them? Beta amyloids?
Beta amyloid and tau plaques, they're tangled proteins.
That's only produced from animal protein, not from plant protein?
Correct, because of the way it's digested through bile and through things like putrescines and cadaverines, different enzymes that actually break it down, they result in tangled proteins. So all proteins are like balls, they're folded proteins. But once they get damaged from cooking, like barbecuing, you get a lot more tangled proteins. They become knotted, tangled, and our body can't do anything with them. And they've actually become toxic. So these tangled proteins can form inflammation, can form plaquing.
So why are plant proteins different?
Because the way they digest and they don't create bile. Our microbiome does the digestion. We don't need bile to break it down.
So even if you're eating like an avocado, a high fat plant, it still doesn't need the bile like it does for meat?
Because avocado has these things called monounsaturated fat, or MUFAs.
Oh, it's specifically the saturated fats.
Correct. So saturated fats are different than monounsaturated fats, which have an emoliating effect. They reduce the negative effect of the saturated fat.
So it's the combination of the saturated fat plus the protein that's the problem?
Correct. Yes.
So what about, just to nail on this issue, what about coconut oil, which is high in saturated fat with plant protein? Could that have a similar bile release effect that we don't want?
You're forgetting the wonderful effects of the polyphenols. You see, the plants have this figured out already. All we have to do is eat the plants. They've got the balance in there. Now, when we start isolating or purifying or, doing processed foods, we're removing a lot of the fiber and polyphenols. That's when you get into problems. That's when they can become negative, because you're taking the stuff that would prevent that negativity from having a negative effect on you once you isolate it. So get away from the processed foods, do mostly whole food, plant-based, and your body will rock on, man. That's what it's meant to do.
It's just so, we're just so lucky. The people who don't understand how amazing plants are, I just feel sorry for them, but man, well, thank you so much. Do you have anything else that's on your mind? I can
it's just like, it's taken us this long to figure out how amazing plants and the symbiotic relationship that humans have with them is, and how detrimental the eating animal products is. We're herbivores. We're not meant to consume animals. To think that you consume animals and it's not having any damaging effect. Yeah, it may take 30 or 40 years for those damaging effects, because of some of the plants you're eating are protecting against that. So it's not as damaging. So basically, the more plants you eat, the better. The less animal products, the better. And if you eat none of the bad stuff, none of the animal products, even better yet. I look at people and I look at, but I've eaten animal products all my life and I'm healthy. No, you're not healthy. You have plaquing all over your arteries and in your brain. You just don't know it yet until a stroke happens or a heart attack happens. But by that time, that's 40 years worth of damage you've done to your body. It's not just it happened overnight. Heart attacks just don't happen.
Not to mention the kidney damage, from that.
All over the body, from every tissue in the body is affected by it. And the benefits of these fibers and polyphenols are across the board. Our whole body has adapted and adopted these health benefits from these phytochemicals. All we have to do is just consume them in the healthiest forms possible.
Just think about it. I'll end on this too, is that we love the colors of these plants. We love the flavors. I've seen you post before. that, like, yeah, we eat a steak, we eat like, most meat products, we're putting plants on there to make it taste good. So we love the taste of plants. We absolutely love the taste of fruits. And I have a personal story of becoming afraid of the carbs in fruits. So I went from, like loving fruits to being afraid of them. And now, having another like loving relationship with fruits. I mean, there's no better like flavor on the planet than a fruit can produce. It's just.
Yeah, I love the ice cream example. It's like, oh, I love ice cream. Well, what do you love about it? Chocolate, that's a plant. Vanilla, that's a plant. Or strawberry, that's a plant. You've just flavored your milk with 3 different plants. That's what you love. You love the plant tastes. The chocolate, the vanilla, and the strawberry. It's not the ice, it's not the milk, the frozen fat that you're enjoying.
It's so true. And if you take I love to just take like some cacao, super high antioxidant and many other benefits as well, magnesium, put that with a frozen banana and maybe some hemp seeds and blend it up. It tastes exactly like ice cream. Like, like you don't even, yeah, it's incredible. Well, Geoff, thank you so much. Do you have anything you want to talk about? I mean, we'll put a link to Clean Machine and we'll have you back on to talk more about those. The amazing.
Yeah, it's so wonderful to, and Jason, you and I have talked about this, that I get to do what I love most, which is help people through nutrition. It's so rewarding when people come back to me and like, oh, my health has improved. This went away, that went away, all these negative, my kids are thriving. When I hear those stories, it's just like, that means everything to me. But we all have to make a living, we all do something to make money. And at least I get to do a job, making money off of helping people. How cool is that?
It's amazing.
And it's not me. I don't even like taking credit. Yes, I was the first to bring Limna to market. I was the first to bring ahi flower to market. I was the first to bring a lot of these plants. But the plants are the hero. I get the awards. I get the Nexty award behind me. But the plants are the heroes. I just get to tell their story. And
you're their agent. You're their agent.
Exactly.
You're working for them. Well, and your knowledge is amazing. I mean, so we'll definitely do this again. I can't wait to be continued. And
always enjoy having conversations with you because we get to go there. And again, it's just such a joy when people can improve their health. It's paying it forward. When I had my breakthrough, I said, oh my God, my life has changed for so much better. How can I pay this forward? And not only do I get to pay it forward and providing health products for other people that they normally wouldn't have access because nobody else was selling ahi flower. So now they have access to it. But we also get to support, my favorite group, Food for Life Global, which is the largest nonprofit vegan food service in the world. And we've fed through our work with them, we've fed over 10,000 hungry children throughout this. So
that's amazing.
Thank you for supporting us, and we'll continue to support others in health and nutrition and sustenance.
And I'll just say one more thing, because you're such a generous guy, and you actually pointed this metaphor out to me. The plants are so generous, right? As opposed to an animal that does not want to be killed. It doesn't want to be taken away from its mother. The plant is just like, eat my fruit, right? So we are what we eat, right? So we're eating these generous things, we become more generous. And that's definitely, embodied in you and everything you do. So thank you on behalf of all of us and so many people I talk to, like, oh, I know Geoff Palmer, across the whole,
and don't ever let them tell you that plants can't grow muscle.
On that note, brother, thank you again.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Peace.